I believe you all can hear me.
Yes, loud and clear.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right. It's a pleasure being with you in via Zoom. And today we'll be having a little discussion on constituents of site construction safety. Like we all know, construction is wide broad, and we'll not have to go into all the details because we don't really have so much time on our side. But we'll start from somewhere, and I believe at the end of this section, we'll have something new to take home, and also an improved knowledge of what we already know. We are all professionals who have been in the system for years, months, and others. So I believe there's also room for us to share knowledge. Construction is a job that involves all personnel, irrespective of the role that they play. All staffs need to be conversant with the health and safety knowledge to ensure that all their projects meet good, to ensure all their staffs are well taken care of, they work safe, in very good condition, so that at the end of the day, it won't affect in any way the nature of the project in which they are doing. Safety is a duty for all. To begin, we all know the important terminologies in occupational health and safety, ranging from the incidents, hazards, accident, dangerous occurrences, and all. We know that hazard is a potential to cause harm to employees, to members of the public too. We also know that incident is an unplanned event that might lead to an accident. We also know that an accident is an incident that is arising of, which can cause an employee harm, personal injury, illness, or possibly death. These are some of the terms we will get to meet or we're meeting in our construction sites. Sometimes when an accident happens, we also have to report an accident. This is a proactive measure that is being taken to prevent future accidents from occurring. These things are done. We also have a reportable accident, a situation whereby a worker cannot be able to perform his or her duty after 3 working days, excluding the day that that accident happened. That is a reportable accident. We're talking about GSA. GSA has to do with the safety and health that takes account into a particular task that has to be done. While GSA that we know also has to do with when we want to look at specific tasks, when employees want to handle a specific task, so as to reduce the injuries, to risks and health of these workers. We all know the importance of managing occupational health and safety. It is economical, it saves us loss of production time, compensation, and it helps prevent illness at work. It is what the law says it is, and also it is the right thing to do. There are key responsibilities in occupational health and safety. But because of the time on our slide, because we don't have so much time, the slide will be available to each and every one of us to go through. So we'll just pass through them and see, let's spend some time on more sensitive topics. In planning for occupational health and safety, there are 6 key duty holders. That is the client, we have the project supervisor, we have the designers, we have the project supervisor, we also have the contractors, we also have the employers. These key persons has a role to play in occupational health and safety. The client has a role to play, same with the project supervisors, same with the contractors, same with the designers. The designer's role is to ensure that from the designs, he communicates this control to all duty holders. The project supervisor, on his own part, is to develop this health and safety plan and to coordinate. Where there are more than 100 personnel on board, it is required by the law to appoint a safety representative in that construction site. The contractor on his own will have to report all accidents where a worker is not able to perform his normal duty for more than 3 working days. He is also to realize with the site safety representative he has on his own ground, and also the employees, they are to ensure that in no possible way endanger anybody by their unsafe acts, by cooperating with the workers, and so on and so forth. That involves using their PPE. Well, for any construction project that we need to embark on, it is very, very vital that a risk assessment has to be done. We know that risks can be defined as the degree of uncertainty. Now, risk management comes into play whereby we need to coordinate activities and control these risk factors. Then risk management comes into play here. It is a coordinated activity to direct and control an organization. And the organization is bound when having a project by its risk management. How well they handle the risk management will go on to tell us how well they are able to work safe during the course of the project. In risk assessment, we have what we call risk management policy. This risk management policy, the organization sets the approach and establish the risk management responsibility. While risk management strategy goes a long way to tell us the little details, such as the procedure, the practices, the responsibility, the sequencing, and timing of everybody in the organization to ensure they work safely. This is what risk management policy and risk management strategy is all about. These are two different terms. In managing risks, there are benefits. One, there are better enhanced communication and reporting. There is that likelihood that we will achieve that task that is to be done. And it helps us to see better identification of opportunities and threats. Well, in risk management, there are some parameters. We'll just run through them because risk management is a topic on its own. There's what we call risk appetite. That goes a long way to tell us that the organization's comfort zone, that is risk appetite. We also have risk tolerance, the ability of an organization to bear the risk an organization is willing to bear in respect of a particular business line. Now, when faced with a task, maybe we want to identify a risk for a particular job that has to be done. Whatsoever, there are 7 key questions that needs to be asked. 7 key questions. Like, what are they? I don't know if you can see my slide.
Yes, we can see your slide. Yes, you can.
Right. Yes, go ahead, sir.
All right.
We can.
There are 7 key questions one can think of within the organization. And that is, what can happen? Where it can happen? When it can happen? Why it can happen? How it can happen? What is the impact? And who is responsible for managing these risks? These are very vital and sensitive questions that we need to ask ourselves. The next slide shows a risk analysis. That shows from the identification of the hazard of the risks, analyzing, evaluating, treating, and possibly review. We know that when we want to analyze risks, we have to first of all identify. Remember the question we made mention to identify these risks. That's some of the possible hazards we can see there. Analyze what actions can be taken to control. We also have to evaluate. Evaluation is the process in determining the significance or the impact of such risks. There's a table down there. Let's see the next slide because this one is more self-explanatory. This table shows a risk matrix rating, and that is when the likelihood and the consequences. Please, when an action, when an accident or when the risk is rare, there's every possibility that the consequences is going to be low. And it goes on and on till you get to the top phase of the matrix. When the action is almost certain, we know that the consequences is going to be extreme. At your own time, I would like you to go through this slide, because this slide is going to be provided to each and every one of us there. Now, in treating and controlling risks, there are methods that we need to follow, such as elimination. Is there a way that we can totally eliminate this risk entirely? Is there a way that the whole hazard can be isolated, maybe using a physical barrier? Are there engineering processes that we can use? What about administrative control? PPEs are always the last resort and subject to review from the management so as to curtail future hazard or change in circumstances. There are categories of hazards. We have the physical, we have the health, we have the chemical, we have the biological, we also have the human factor. Fiscal hazard, there are so many because we tend to see them every day in our place of work, ranging from trip, slip, fall, falling objects, from heights, poor housekeeping, and also awkward lifting of materials. These are fiscal hazards. We also have some health hazards, such as dust, vibration, people who use compactor and drills. These are health hazards. We also have chemicals such as fuel, solvents, paint material, and dermatitis such as skin issues. We also have people who suffer from toxic effects or inflammation. These are all chemical hazards. Biological hazard. Alcohol is noteworthy because a large amount of workers drink alcohol. Sometimes they go sneak out of the place of work, they go and drink alcohol, consume alcohol. This alcohol has a way of affecting their body system. At the end of the day, it poses a hazard to them. This is an example of biological hazard. The COVID-19 we are combating, or we are trying to live with, is also a form of biological hazard. Human factor is also another form of hazard that is also being overlooked somehow at the place of work. Some workmates are being bullied. Stress is the order of the day. We also have some form of violence. Some persons who live in places where there are a lot high rates of crime. These persons undergo their own form of hazard when they go back home. We also have the vulnerable workers. Some of these workers, especially those of us who are in Lagos, you see people from neighboring countries coming to work here. Those foreign workers, they also have, these are some of the human hazard they experience, because some of them are being marginalized, some of them are being talked down to, and all that. We also have the younger workers, we also have nursing mothers. These factors can all contribute to ill health at work. Well, in preventing an accident, there are 9 principles that we ought to follow, such as avoidance, which is 1. Is there a way we can avoid this accident completely? Or can we reevaluate them? How about compacting them? How about adaptation? Can we replace these dangerous items? How about giving priority to more persons instead of just one person? What is our development policy like? Our training, how well our staff train on first aid, firefighting, safe practice, and all that. How about PPEs, our high visibility vests? These are 9 principles that we all need to follow. It's not always easy, but then there's always room for improvement. Let's narrow down this training to certain equipment, high-risk equipment, that is safe use of construction plant and equipment. I don't know if everyone can hear me, or I should continue.
Continue, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
I can hear you clear.
Continue, I can hear you.
Sound and clear, sir.
In site layout, First of all, when mobilizing to a site, our site needs to be properly defined. That goes a long way to tell us about our site layouts, our perimeter fencing, good visibility, egress and access, warning signs, loading bay, storage material. These are all necessary items that needs to be prepared before mobilizing to sites. Traffic and pedestrian walkway should be clearly defined. Adequate warning of overhead and utility buildings, and drainage and escape routes and fire extinguisher. This makes up a very good layout. This picture shows a slide. To my left, it shows a site that has a very poor site layout. If you can zoom, you see very well that everywhere has not been clearly defined. But whereas, if you look at to my right-hand side, you can see a clearly defined site. I'm sure we want to find ourselves in an organization that has a clearly defined site, because it goes a long way to tell us how much we intend to achieve zero accident throughout the course of our project. We also have access where, if you look very well, you see a pedestrian walkway and also an access for vehicles. I also have speed limit. These are all necessary factors that has to be put in place in designing a site. Housekeeping, this cannot be overly emphasized. We need to make sure that all our items, all our lockers, canteen, washroom, the stairways, they are all clean, free. We want to keep all escape routes uninterrupted and stack chemicals where they are supposed to be. This is an example of what we are talking about here. A fire escape route, a can for different types of combustible materials. And when chemicals are being spilled, we want to ensure that these things are properly cleaned. This is an unsafe condition here, where we see nail, sharp objects protruding out of a wooden plank and all that. As a safety professional, it is advised that if we cannot take this stuff off, it is better we see ways we can reduce the risks, so that if someone steps on this, the accident will be very, very minimal. We also want to ensure that dangerous substances are stored properly and they should be labeled. This goes a long way in showing that our site, this is part of the way we can properly define our site. When it gets to electrical safety, we also want to look out for bombs. We also want to look out for damaged plugs, sockets, loose connections, and all that. We all know the incident that might come out from electrical shock. Secondary incident might result to muzzle splash at the end of the day. Because of the shock, it might fall down from where we are. But primary injury will give you a direct shock. That is electrical safety for you. But then, it is advisable that when working, you use portable equipment of rated over 125 volts alternating currents. This is a recommended equipment that has to be used in a construction site. Moving forward, some construction sites, you see overhead power line going through them. Especially, this is more evident when you're working on road construction. But what do we do in such a situation? Do we just go ahead and start carrying out our tasks as if we have already done our risk assessment, we've known it all? No. It is advisable that the management come together and meet with local authorities so that these zones, these hazard zones, will be clearly defined. Well, a hazard zone is an area in the vicinity of an overhead line that must be isolated before work is being done. Let's assume we are working under an overhead power line. That place we are working, it has to be defined. It has to be isolated before work can be done there. We also want to remember that the dimension of the hazard zone depends on the voltage that is flowing over the overhead line. Now, in this hazard zone, there are different zones in this hazard zone. If you notice, if you go to some construction sites where their generator is or some high power equipment, you always see a no-go area. I'm sure we must have seen it in our construction sites. Well, that no-go area is what we call the exclusion zone. This is a no-go area placed along an overhead electrical line to avoid aching or any contacts. That is why it is clearly defined an exclusion zone and a no-go area. There's also what we all call a tip zone. That tip zone means where trucks are not supposed to dump anything. That is what a tip zone means. We also have a crossing zone. Please and please, as a note of warning, whenever maybe we see an overhead line, maybe if it has been used, or we do not know if it has been used or if it's been used or it's been in use, please do not go there to touch it. They said you should always assume that that lifeline is live because we do not know. So to avoid putting our life at risk, we should always assume that any overhead power line, there is a lifeline there and it can give us lots of injury. So we need to be assured that it has been certified by local authority or it has been switched off for us to start any kind of operation that we need to do. We also need to have a slow down zone where mobile equipment stay or are being stationed. We would not want to work so fast or operate these plants so fast. We also want to keep clear of these plants, knowing that only qualified personnel should be there. We also want to be careful of swinging the wires due to wind and all that. And when carrying objects, we want to carry them horizontally below shoulder level when walking under this power line. Having talked about overhead power line, what about when walking on our ground surfaces? Well, as safety officers, we want to consult with our management, with our team. We want to check for the plan, the map, or possibly if an EIA has already been conducted on that building. We want to see if there are buried cables, underground facilities, and all that. There are detectors that can be used, which is already stated there in this slide, such as hume detector and metallic detectors. These detectors check for all those things. Now, for safe digging, it is advisable when digging, handheld power tools. Handheld power tools will be likened to, we have a jackhammer, a drilling machine. They should not be used close to underground services. Rather, a shovel, a spade should be used instead. Maybe when digging, because of the dust and all that, maybe due to when during the dry season we are digging and there's dust, what can be done? It's advisable that we apply water spray on intervals on this affected place that will be dug, so as to help mitigate the effect of dust and asbestos. And also the right PPE should also be worn. Also, when working on road construction, we also need to implement very good lighting. We also need to have a very good traffic management plan. If possible, we have someone who is in charge. Or if that will be the case, we realize with local authorities for them to help us carry out these tasks. We also would not want to use barriers that will be so hard on road users. Sometimes in some places, you see when construction is ongoing, there have been existing pipelines and all that, gas stations or gas pipelines that run underneath. Please, a mechanical excavator should not be used within 3 meters from a gas plant or a fuel petrol line below. Please, to avoid causing harm to each and every one of the workers who are present on that site. The next slide shows a road construction closure. This shows a typical road barrier that has been used. Proper traffic management is there. And also good lighting, road sign, and guardrails have been all stationed. This is an example of what we can do. It's possible that we've been doing better. There's also room for us to improve our culture. At your own time, you can take your time and go through this slide very well, or those pictures very well. I'm trying to run through because of the time, the constraint of our time. We are moving forward to another interesting part, which is excavation. Excavation is also another advanced form of digging. When having or embarking on an excavation task, we want to ensure that the excavation has been inspected by a competent person. That is, having conducted all plans, seeing the EIA of the existing place that needs to be excavated, and to confirm that or verify that there is no existing facility there. We want to ensure that adequate shoring material is provided. Some soils are very soft. When excavating, you see them backfilling inside the soil that has been excavated. To avoid such, we want to avoid good shoring by using timber or some metal. Some organizations decide to use some piling sheets. Whichever works, shoring should be done, should be suitable, and it should be in accordance with the method statements. We also need to ensure that there is enough access and egress with good suitable ladder. And also, there should be warning sign for any evacuation that is below 2 meters. This is a typical example of what a shoring experience looks like. This is being done by using a bamboo or a stick or a timber. Some organizations tend to use metal, which is more expensive. But whichever way or whichever method the organization chooses to use, or whichever approach they choose to use, what really matters is that it should be firm and it should be approved by a competent person. Now, when tipping a sand by an excavated place, a stop should be put behind the tire so as to avoid this vehicle sliding backward, because the ground might be soft, and considering the weight of the vehicle that is coming to drop materials, we don't want that to happen. How about when walking near water or overhead water? It is assumed that we need to have a standby power vest. We also need to have a lifeline, a combined life jacket, a good harness life jacket. We also need to have an emergency line. We also need to have all our complete PPEs. This is going to help us working very well near and over a water line, a bridge construction, or whatsoever near any form of water body. What about in the form of demolition? Normally, when we want to construct maybe in an existing facility, there's always room for us to demolish what we don't want and for us to start rebuilding. Well, demolition is a form of dismantling a structure or part of the structure without affecting the physical integrity of the structure. Most part of construction work, they are high-risk jobs. Same with demolition. Knowing that this is a high-risk job, it is advisable that we plan properly for demolition. Like we said earlier, in carrying out any task, we need to ensure that a risk assessment has to be done. We have to identify the hazard, we have to identify the risks involved. We also have to determine the control measures that will be put in place. When embarking on a demolition, it is always advisable that we give a 5-day notice to every regulatory body that will be present before the work commences. It is also advisable that we put all emergency preparedness services in place. We also want to ensure that all our plans, suitable PPEs are provided. Ladders, crane, equipment, warning signs, they should be in place and they should be in good condition. We need to also plan the work very well and also make sure that all essential services such as water, gas, telecommunications, sewage, chemicals have already been shut down before any demolition work commences. When demolishing old buildings, we tend to see some hazardous chemicals and materials that are being present in this building. In roof, you tend to see asbestosis, in old paint, water pipes, plumbing fittings. We tend to see the presence of lead. As the building gets older, these chemicals accumulate more, and it also increases the chances of contamination. It is also advisable that we plan this work very well. We secure this area, make sure that it has enough security, enough public access and protection. Like we said, overhead perimeter fencing rather, a good scaffold should be able to withstand load. And we also want to prevent unauthorized access for public users and those who will not be conducting such work with us. You know, after demolition, there will be lots of debris. We also need to be careful so that we do not, in the process of removing these debris, affect the structure or the building or the part of the building that has not been demolished, because at that point it becomes a safety hazard. When demolishing maybe on high-rise building, it's also advisable that we should not allow these debris or these demolished parts fall freely to the ground, because when it does, it now becomes a hazard to those persons, to members of the public, and possibly employers who might be doing other form of tasks downstairs. It's always advisable that this demolition should be enclosed, or rather an exclusion zone rather. A safety for nets can be used too to barricade there. We are coming to that aspect too. When working with work at height involves the work that involves 2 meters and above. We want to make sure that access and egress to that place should be firmly planned and installed. If you're working with a scaffold, fine and good. If you're working with a ladder, note that a ladder is not a working platform. A ladder is not a working platform. Rather, it is important that we look for ways to set up a scaffold, a proper scaffold where necessary. We also need to have a guardrails and toe board. We also need to guard against all forms of floor opening and cover them with boards on both sides, so that someone walking can walk comfortably on that platform. This is a typical example of a ladder that can be used when walking. You see how firm this ladder is. If you look at the base of this ladder, you see somewhere where it was braced to the ground, so that someone climbing can actually access this ladder without having an assistance from anyone. This is how it should be. We also want to use a safety net. These safety nets, when it is not practicable, or we see that we cannot use a guardrail, that is when we employ a safety net. And safety nets, if damaged, it should be replaced immediately. And the safety net and harness should be inspected and maintained thoroughly. This is an example of a safety net. I don't know if you can see my screen here.
Yes, we can.
This is an example of a safety net.
Yes, we can.
This is also a bigger picture of a safety net. I'm sure we must have seen this kind of net in road constructions or bridge constructions. This is what it looks like. Now, Another form of work at height is scaffolding on this working platform. For those of us that were here, last week Friday, when our fellow professional talked about scaffold, he told us that scaffold are temporary structures that enable us to work at certain heights, or maybe enable material to be taken there. So we'll just run through this part of scaffold. We'll see the different types of scaffold. We'll talk, this is a bed case scaffold that is always used in interior work. An example of this bed case, look at a bed case scaffold. It's always used for interior work. This is a put-log scaffold, often used by bricklayers. This is an example of put-log scaffold. We also have a mobile scaffold. Mobile scaffold are often also used to do lightweight work. This is an example of a mobile scaffold. We also have a truss-out scaffold for parapet wall and upper windows. This is how it is. We also have a ladder. We all know what ladder means, but it was shown there. This is also a ladder. We also have bamboo. A lot was said about bamboo last time, that it is going out of phase. True, it is. But then in some situations, we are being faced with this. Some organization uses this. It's always advisable that whatever form of bamboo scaffold we are using should be certified by a competent person and safe for us to do a type of work we want to do. This is a trestle scaffold. This is it. I also have a horn scaffold. As the name implies, it can hang on line, rope, and chains. We also have a single pole scaffold. This is a single pole scaffold. I also have a suspended scaffold. This is the one that is being used on high-rise buildings for cleaning windows and maintenance work whatsoever. There are mobile power plants. An example of a mobile power plant is crane, bulldozer, and it's like when doing a task or any form of construction with this equipment, it is advisable that we do our work in line with the method statement that is being provided for this job. That is, the equipment has to be inspected, a risk assessment has to be carried out, the load has to be accurately measured so that it doesn't become a hazard to those persons on site. To my left is one of the power plants here. That is a machine here, a crane rather, trying to lift a load against an overhead power plant. We all know what the consequences is going to be. But had it been, before this operation was carried out, a teamwork, a team talk, good planning was carried out, this accident wouldn't have happened. Now, this is a safe operation of a crane. Possibly all hands were on deck. They had a marksman who were there to direct this whole thing. A qualified rigger was also there. All competent persons have sat down, analyzed the plan, and they carried out the operation. And to see that the operation was a success, unlike this one that we saw on the left-hand side. So whichever task they want to do, teamwork, planning is always very, very important in construction. What about manual handling? Over the years, we've seen work-related accidents relating from musculoskeletal disorders. You see persons going to work that involve lifting, and they come back home, complain that I'm having pains to my arms, to my leg, and whatsoever. It's advisable that before carrying out any lifting operation, we need to take into account into our individual capacity. Note that no two individuals have the same body capacity. Some persons have very high tolerance. Some persons do not. Some persons have the strength. Some persons do not. We also want to take account into, also want to take cognizance of all these factors. We also want to look at the nature of the load. What are we lifting? We want to look at the environment. We also want to look at trainings. We also want to look at our working organization. There are good lifting procedures, and that is clearly highlighted on this next slide. That is lifting, incorrect lifting, and also have safe lifting. We want to take our time to view these lifting methods properly. And there's also another one here, a do's and don'ts at our workplace when it comes to manual lifting. We also want to be careful too. In lifting, there are factors, like we said earlier. When we look at the objects, we want to look at the weights, we want to look at the center of gravity, we want to look at the height. When it comes to the tasks, we want to look at the frequency, the height, the duration. What about the environment? We also want to look at lighting, space, obstacles. Then when it comes to the person, we also want to look at the person's size. Some persons are more robust. Some persons have high level of endurance. Some persons have strength. Some persons are more skilled or more knowledgeable than the others. These are factors that we need to take into cognizance. We need to take cognizance of. In fire safety, we are not going to talk so much because this is a topic on its own. One thing that is particular about this fire safety is that there are some jobs that involves cutting or welding in a place that have combustible materials. There are some construction jobs that will require you doing some welding or cutting in a place that has combustible materials. If we find ourselves in that kind of situation, what do we need to do? Well, it is advisable that we spray the affected area with water where that work is to be done. We want to spread damping sand. We want to lay fireproof blankets. We want to also ensure that the right fire extinguishers are in place. Proper housekeeping and a valid permit to work should be in place for this kind of job. This is an example of a fire hose, a fireman, and also, like I said earlier, concerning that last, when having that kind of job, it is also advisable that we have a fire watch who will be on ground. In a situation where we do not have a fire watch, it's advisable that we do not work alone in that kind of situation. A boarding system is always advisable. This is a welding operation that is being done. You see how well the welder is well kitted with his PPEs, good lighting, good materials, equipment in good condition. This is exactly how our construction site should be, especially when handling welding operation. These are classes of fire extinguishers. Now we have a confined space. Like we know, a confined space is a space that has limited access to. A confined space is a place that has limited access to. It can be a fuel tank, an hydraulic tank, a pressure filter, and whatsoever. Please, when working in a confined space, no one should enter until a risk assessment has been done by a competent person and appropriate safety measures have been taken into effect. A permit to work, of course, is always there when working in a confined space. A gas test also has to be done. First aid materials, extinguishers, emergency preparedness should also be on ground. This is a pictorial illustration of someone who wants to enter into a confined space. You see a watchman who is there. We also see a multi-gas detector. We need to see how well the person is, the personnel is well kitted. We also saw a permit to work system there on that page. This shows that it is very, very vital for all these things to be in place. Now, this is a permit to work. This is an enclosed space, a confined space rather. You also have a standby worker. Who is that man up there? I also have a fume extractor, and so on and so forth. I don't know if you're all following.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we are.
Yes.
Thank you very much. On the issue of personal protective equipment, PPEs, we all know why we need to have our PPEs. Sometimes our workers and our employers, top management makes it practically impossible or difficult to implement our PPEs or for workers to wear their PPEs. But please, we need to try our best to ensure that these PPEs are provided and readily available for every person, and they must use them. It's non-debatable. These PPEs have to be properly taken care of, they have to be maintained, and they have to be in good condition. Nobody should endanger his or herself or endanger others by removing or damaging his PPEs. On the brighter side of eye protection, we all know the kind of injuries that might result from eye protection, such as blindness, vision loss, and others. These are the different types of eye protection that we have. We have a face shield, safety goggle, and others. What about those persons who work in the office settings that are always glued to their display devices? As safety professionals, of course, we go to our offices, sometimes we send reports and all that. What happens? Sometimes you see a whole lot of us having used our system, our phone, or maybe whatever device you are using for a long time. We start seeing us developing some eye strain. Why is this possible, or why is this like that? It is advisable that we position our computer or our desktop or whichever display we are using to work at arm's length away from our face. That is, our laptop should be, our display device, our desktop should be at arm's length away from our face. While doing that, we also need to adjust the font size so as to suit where we can see it properly. Also, while working with our system, sometimes we might be running late, and we have a whole lot of things to accomplish within that short period of time. It is advisable that when working, we follow the 20-20 rules, 20-20-20, because it allows the eye sometimes. Please, the host is disturbing my slide. It is advisable when working with our system or with our display device, we follow the 20-20 rules. For every 20 minutes, it is advisable we look at a distance. Please, host, I don't know the action that is doing that is affecting my slide, please.
What about now?
It's still the same thing.
It should have gone now. It should have left.
All right, it's better now.
Take
It is advisable that for every 20 minutes, we take a break, looking at an object 20 feet away for 20 seconds. That is the 20-20 rules. Because on an average, human eye blinks about 15 to 20 times per minute rather, and about 900 to 1,200 times per hour. So when we take this break, it allows our eye fluid to exercise its normal blinking pattern. It's also advised that we reduce the glare on our smartphone and our display device. We should lower our phones or our laptops brightness. If the lightning in our environment is higher than that of our display device, then it's a problem. It's a hazard to us. Vice versa. If the brightness in our phone is higher than that of our environment, it becomes a hazard to us, vice versa. So we want to be careful, we want to put our phone, our display device in a way that will not affect our eyes in the long run. This is a helmet. We want to make sure that it is always kept in good condition. A fall protection. This is a fall protection when walking at height. This is a harness belt that needs to be worn. Sometimes workers will tell that I've been working for years. Working for years is not a guarantee that when an accident wants to happen, it will happen to you. So we do not want to accept any form of compromise. This harness fall protection must be worn at all times. A full body harness must be worn. When working with chemicals or dust, asbestosis, it is advisable that we have our appropriate respiratory equipment. This is going to help us. After we have the disposable masks, we also have the gas masks that have also been there. We also have breathing apparatus. That is if we want to work in a confined space. In working with electrical equipment, we also want to make sure that we do not want to work with a valid permit, and all our tasks, before any work is done, a competent person must be there to certify all the job that we are about to do. For every construction work, there's something that is always paramount. That is noise. We all know that noise is something that affects, is a global problem. But then, from what we know in occupational health and safety, we can say that noise is an unwanted sound in a workplace that exceeds over 85 decibel in the space of 8 hours. Decibel, like we all know, is the sound in measuring, is a unit in measuring sound, the sound of noise. Now, you know, we said earlier, in any task that has to be done, a risk assessment has to be carried out, such as identifying the noise, understanding the effects of it, and the use of appropriate protection that has to be done. And also training has to be in full gear. And also, this is a noise hazard. Let's see if we could play over this picture a little. This shows close to a 140 decibel. The sound of a gunshot produces 140, which is like a deafening sound, such as music, such as different sounds. As the slide goes on, we'll see ways that we can actually pinpoint each of these sounds and to see which one is safe for us and how we can know or decipher which of the sound is loud enough or is becoming hazardous. In determining factors, in determining noise factors, we look at the level of the noise, the length of the exposure, the distance. Like we said, individuals' abilities differs. Diseases, genetic factor, lifestyle, and the type of sound that is being produced also affects one's determining the source of the noise. And this whole issue can lead to poor concentration. Some persons develop impotency or change in menstrual cycle. Some persons find it very difficult to hear low and high frequency. Some persons also develop deafness as time goes on. Now, for ear protection, it's advisable that we use an earplug. This takes the shape of the ears that when we start it, it can actually take the shape of our ears. We also have our earmuff. When we start it, the different sound level. There are thresholds to these sounds. Like we said, a gunshot produces its own sound of about 140. A vehicle produces its own sound of about 90. A music instrument produces its own sound. The normal noise we hear at our piece of work, normal gist also contributes to its own level of sound. We also have instruments that are being used to measure sound. We have the noise dosimeter. We also have noise level meters. We also have continuous unmobile sources. These are ways, or these are instruments that can be used to measure sound. In control, like we said in our risk management, we have engineering control, we have administrative, we also have use of PPE, we also have a noise reduction rating. In noise reduction rating, like our earplug, it helps in reducing 29 decibel of sound. Let's say we are working on with an equipment that produces a sound of about 100. If we are using an earplug, that 100, the earplug takes away 29. That means it has helped us cushion the effect or mitigate the effect of that noise. Same with the other form, the Carbolex form of earplug there. So these are all forms of PPEs that can be used in mitigating the effects of noise. There are different types of hearing loss. We also have the sensorineural, we also have the tinnitus, which cause conjunction with our hearing. The conductive, this is a hearing problem that affects the outer or the middle ear. There are different programs that can help us at our place of work as safety officials or safety professionals. There are programs that can help us. There are different factors too that can also come into play. No exposure to continuous or intermittent sound rate at about 140 should occur. We should have a program, continuous training program, that workers should be aware that the noise exposure should not exceed 85 decibel within a continuous hearing pattern of 8 hours. Anything above 8 hours, then it becomes a hazard to us. Peak sound of 140. Peak sound of 140, that is the sound of a gun. That maybe when you hear a gunshot, that shot alone is about 140 decibel. We do not want to find ourselves in that kind of environment for a long time. There's every likelihood that such sound at that instance might not give us hearing problem, but continuous exposure to this type of sound will definitely give us a hearing or a noise, will definitely contribute to a noise hazard to our body. Now, for every whispers, we have 20, refrigerator, and the rest of that. Our Walkman, our gunshot produces about 30 to 40, motorcycles, and all that. Sometimes when we go to parties, the music that are being played there, they're over 140 decibel. This alone can contribute to the hazard that we face today. Like we said, people's hearing patterns, people's susceptibility differs. I might be able to endure a certain amount of noise for a certain amount of time. Does not mean that my partner or my colleague will be able to endure the same thing. One general knowledge that we can actually take home is this. If I have to shout at my colleague who is 1 meter away from me, then there's every tendency that there's a noise hazard associated in that background. If I have to shout to my colleague who is 1 meter away, that means there's every tendency that there's a noise hazard in the background. Noise, big sound from a gunshot, a dynamite explosion might not actually in effect cause noise hearing instantly, but continuous exposure will. So these are things that we need to take into factors when an organization wants to, from time to time, when they want to do administrative process, they end up carrying what we call an ediometric testing. This serves as a monitoring function to determine if a hearing loss has occurred and is a tool for assessing the overall effectiveness of all the controls that they've been putting in place to ensure that they have a good working system. This test is being performed in both years and is applicable to all workers. And at the end of the day, when all these things are being carried out, the audiologists will maintain a record of all the tests. And this training will also be documented for future references. We are actually moving on to the last slide, to the last topic of this our discussion, and that involves accident reporting and investigation. I don't know if you all can hear me very well.
Loud and clear.
Loud and clear, very audible.
Yeah, we is.
Moving forward, we'll decide an accident to be reportable if it involves any lost time, a fatality, maybe the victim is in a critical condition, or it results to any damage in the company's assets or facility, or if the injury is more than what a first aid case or a cause damage can handle. And some of the reasons why we investigate, why an accident investigation should be done as soon as possible. We know that sometimes workers can be very funny. Some of them might rush quickly to the scene and try to see if they can try to clean the, or in a bid to avoid investigation, maybe they feel that they'll be witch hunt and all that. They want to go there to try to cover what must have transpired. But then it's advisable that this evidence should be investigated on time, because evidences deteriorate. And when we delay an investigation, there's every likelihood that we might end up in a non-conclusive investigation. And to avoid future occurrences, it is advisable that we carry out such investigation ASAP, as soon as possible. In investigating an accident, the workers need to be aware that the purpose why this accident needs to be investigated is not because so that they will be sacked or they will be punished, so as to avoid future reoccurrences and to improve in ways of training and whatsoever. The frequency of such occurrence will also need to be taken into place. If the accident was caused as an act of negligence, we also need to evaluate the conditions for supervisors and audits. And having gotten the root cause of the accident, we'll prepare your HSE officer or whichever site representative that we have on ground. We have to prepare recommendation, corrective actions, and this has to be done on the set dates that has been put in place. An accident has happened, fine, an investigation was carried out. The dates for the corrected actions need to be followed promptly. And also a follow-up of recommendation, corrective actions will also need to be carried out by whosoever is in charge, either the safety officer, the safety supervisor, the top management. And he, after doing all this, will have to relate down to the project manager or the client or the site manager or whoever is in charge for compliance. And whenever there is a non-compliance, this has to also be reported to. We've come a long way. We've talked a whole lot about construction safety. There is still a whole lot that has to be said. I believe in our various places of work, there are different approaches that we use in following up all aspects of construction safety. But whichever environment we find ourselves, whichever task that we know that needs to be done, the first thing that needs to be at the back of our mind that we need to carry out a risk assessment. We also need to plan. We also need to ensure that we work as a team. This can help us to achieve whatever task that we want to do. This is how far we can go for today's training. It's really been an honor talking to everyone. And if you have any question, you can feel free to send your question on the comment section there. I'll be here. Mr. Walu is here. I also want to thank him for giving me the opportunity to do a little research on construction safety. I'm also learning. We're all learning. I believe there's also room for improvement, and I also believe we'll get to see ourselves some other time. Etta John is safety officer. Thank you so much. Over to you, Mr. Walide.
Thank you, Mr. John Etta. This is very, 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 very resounding, and this is very, very interesting. A well-experienced professional as John is best to dissect the constituents, breaking them down into pieces and showing us an overview of what we should expect when it comes to construction safety. It discussed so many things. In fact, each of the topic it discussed is a topic on its own. It started by talking about the important terminologies in health and safety, the importance of managing health and safety in construction. Why do we need health and safety in the construction industry? The economical values, the ill health effect, the legal part of it, and the moral part of it, of being the right thing to do. He spoke about some legislations and guidance in health and safety, the Health and Safety at Work Act, and so many of them, Construction Regulation Part 4 of Site Safety Provision 2006. He spoke about duties of the employers, duty of the employee, and the duty of safety officers when it comes to managing the health and safety of individuals and of the workplace as a whole. We're talking about health and safety. It is not only about the people, it's not only about the equipment, but it also has to do with the environment, the individuals, every aspect of the workplace processes regarding construction safety. And he mentioned a lot of this concerning the duty of the engineers, the site supervisory staff, their duty, how to plan for safety. He spoke about how to plan for safety. I'm doing an overview for those who join us later, how to plan for safety. He spoke about the client side of it, the project supervision, the design phase of the project, the construction phase of the project, the contractors that are engaged in the project, the designers of the project, and the employees and employers and every other interested parties. He mentioned about the clients, tried to explain each and every one of us, every one of them to us. Then he also talked about risk assessment and management. He talked about what is risk, how do we identify risk, how do we evaluate risk management, risk evaluation. He spoke about the policies that have to do with risk. He talked about the benefit of managing risk. Where do you have to manage the risk in the workplace, the risk appetite, the risk parameters? How do you measure this risk? What are those things you can use to identify your risk? The 7 questions, the why, the where, the when, the what, the who, the how, all these are what he briefly explained to us in this discussion. He talked about risk analysis, identifying risk, analyzing this risk, evaluating this risk. He talked about how to control this risk. He mentioned the common 5 hierarchy of safety controls: elimination, isolation, engineering, administrative control, PPE, and review of corrective measures. Then he also mentioned the 5 categories. He gave us 5 categories of hazard: the physical, the health, the chemical, the biological, and the human factor. And he explained each and every one of them. He explained the physical hazard, the health hazard, the chemical hazard, the biological hazard, and the human factors. Then he moved to accident prevention. How do we prevent accident? What are the 9 principles of accident prevention? He enlightened us. Most of us, even me, I don't know that there is a way that I can easily understand the principles of accident prevention by knowing these 9 principles: the avoidance, the evaluation, the adaptation, the replacement, the giving priority, development of policy, training, and PPE. These are what you see in the slides I'm going to share with us later. Then he moved to safe use of construction plants and equipment. How do we lay out our site? How do we arrange our site? Is not supposed to be dirty, looking rowdy. How do we arrange our site? What do we prioritize? The demarcation and everything are what he explained to us. Then he talks about access and site traffic on the construction site. Then he spoke about housekeeping, the importance of housekeeping, proper storage of dangerous substances, He also talks about, he also spoke about electrical safety. What are those hazards that have to do with electricity, portable equipment, electrical inspection? What do you check out for? What do you look out for? Then he moved to working over overhead power cables, overhead power lines. It's still part of electrical construction. He explained this for us: the electrical zone, the hazard zones, exclusion zone, no tip zone, crossing point, assume it's live. These are the major points that has to do with electricity when it comes to overhead cable. In the general electricity, use of electric or access to electric, access to electricity when it comes to construction safety. Then it talks about the slow down, the keep clear of land. When you're working, like if there are lifting operations, and these are the things you need to look out for. Just going through this will make you easier for you to be able to manage this. Then it moved into underground, working underground. What are those precautions to look out for, which also included what Mr. Ejiro Michael mentioned to us, that we should also include that they need to check for whatever is underground, checking for underground cables. Some go to an advanced level to have colored cables and the likes. Then safe digging practices, overview of it. Spoke about so many things: excavation, road closure, shoring. How do you ensure that there's proper shoring, walkover or near waters, demolition, planning demolition. How do you plan demolition? How do you make sure that your demolition is carried out successfully? The planning stage, it spoke about the planning stage, the licensing in some organization or in some locations, some countries. What are those licenses you need to take and the likes? Hazardous chemicals and materials, securing your work area, removal of debris, work at height. Then from there, he moved to work at height and explain what work at height is for us, and the mobile work, the cranes and the mobile power plant, the procedures for work at height. He talked about ladders, safety net, scaffolds, risk management for scaffold, the type of scaffolds that we have. He gave us the pictorial diagram of how they look like, the ladders, the bamboo scaffold. We talked about scaffold last week, and it was really educating. He spoke about scaffold last week. Thank you for also mentioning this. Then about the type of scaffold that we have, he mentioned so many types. In fact, I also learned today single post scaffold, suspended scaffold, then mobile power plants, the mobile elevating work platform, then it moved to manual handling, manual lifting, good procedures for lifting operations, lift up for ourselves, how to lift as an individual, as a group. Then fire hazard and welding and cutting. He also talked about this fire safety aspect, confined space, so many discussions that he has given to us today. And I know that we have put so many things down. It's not only about requesting for material. While they are teaching us, while they are educating us, we should also take time to jot things down. We should jot things down always. Then he spoke about eye protection. Then from eye protection, he talked about preventive measures to ensure that this ergonomics does not affect our health in any way, because it's a risk on its own. The rays that come from screens and the likes, they are very dangerous to our eyes. Then from there, he talked about fall protection also, respiratory protective equipment, breathing apparatus, working with electrical equipment. Then he moved to noise management, different kind of noise, the decibel for noise, how to manage noise, the noise hazard, factors to determine noise hazard, then the protection you need to look out for, the level of noise, noise measuring instrument, noise measuring instrument that we can use to measure noise, to know, because in the construction industry, there are a lot of noise that come from various areas, from the generators, from the equipment, from so many people. So from so many facilities, there's always a high level of noise that could affect not only long-term effect on the workers, but it can also affect concentration, and it can lead to accidents where there is no proper management of a particular noise level at all time in the workplace. Noise reduction rating, type of hearing loss. It talks about the tinnitus and the sensor neural, the ototosic substances. Then the programs that we can also use to evaluate noise in our workplace. Then how do you test for the noise, or the metric testing? Then from there, he went to record keeping of all these noise evaluation and the likes. Then finally, he finished the discussion on accident reporting and investigation. Why do we need to report accidents? What are the benefits? How do we report accidents? and what are the investigation approach that we can use. So we really appreciate this. This is very robust. The material is here for us to use at any point in time, and we will send it across to us at every point in time. If you have any question, please let us ask. Let us drop it in the comment section. Okay, we are having a lot of feedback here. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you for knowledge here. I appreciate. Wow, what a wonderful presentation. Thank you, sir. Great presentation. Great presentation. Thanks so much for the time and effort. God bless you. Powerful, wonderful presentation. Please do well to share the material with us. If you have been joining us, you know we used to share all these materials. Thanks. That was a wonderful presentation. Thank you very much, fellow. Thanks for this wonderful presentation, and your content is robust. Okay, from Mr. Genepao, and precise to the vital point to look out for when it comes to construction safety. Well done. And what I can say is that you were knowledgeable and high experience in construction safety. Yes, thank you very much for that feedback. What about HSE plan? Okay, yes, no, please kindly mute yourself. So, Mr. Engineer Daniel Saiki is talking about HSE plan. Yes, these are the documentation part. At the initial stage, you know, at the beginning, you talk about the planning phase of the project, things to look out for, and each person's responsibility. So the HSE plan, the HSE manual, the HSE procedure, and every other thing are what the document, and even when it comes to documentation, there are other things also involved. Like you said, the policy, the method statement, the risk assessment. Yes, these are the JHAs that you develop at every point in time, your permit to work. There are a lot of documentation that have to do with the equipment you are using, a lot of documentations in the construction industries. And there are so many aspects, and we really appreciate this, Engineer Daniel. Yes, we also have another person. Thank you so much for the presentation. Kindly share the content. I already sent my WhatsApp number to everyone that wants to follow up on this, to get the material. We need to send the materials to the groups that we all belong to most of the group that I belong to, that we belong to together. I share these trainings to. We share the materials across that. And we also try to share via mails too. We upload it on a drive, and we send the link for everybody to download. And people have been requesting for permission to download, and they've been downloading these materials that we give at every point in time. Yes. Can I join this WhatsApp group? Yes. Please kindly chat me up on this number. If you are 00454973332. So in case you are not in Nigeria, you need to add +234 for Nigeria. So in the absence of no other question, like we used to say, this is safety moment with Ali, and this training has been put together, sponsored by Corrective Safety Consult. We give safety trainings, health and safety trainings, management trainings to individuals, to organizations, soft skills training, bespoke trainings for organizations. If you want us to come and train your workforce on a particular topic, you can actually invite us. You can actually invite us to come and train them. If you want us to come and give them a toolbox talk, or a once in a time toolbox talk to educate them, or to talk to your management about health and safety, or to give a formal training, please kindly get across to us. We are always ready to go around and to educate people about health and safety. Do you also want us to take some moment of health and safety in your workplace to help you to evaluate how effective your workplace procedures or workplace policies or your workplace health and safety management system is? Just a third eye view, not auditing, just a third eye view. Yes, we also do that. You can always count on us on that. Yes, this has been put together by Corrective Safety Consult. We also have a YouTube channel. This video, hopefully, like all other videos, will be available on our YouTube channel. Just search for the word Safety World TV. The Safety World is together and the TV is separate. Safety World TV. Search for it. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get updates on safety videos. We post a lot of safety videos at every point in time. Always and always we post safety videos. So join us, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and share to others to also subscribe to this safety YouTube channel, specifically for safety enlightenment. Engineer Daniel, you have something to say, sir?
Yes. Good evening, everyone. I really appreciate this training session and the opportunity you have placed before us. So please, I want to ask a question because I work in manufacturing sector, and then I will love to ask this question. Now, if an employee or a construction worker has complained that he has bruises or has pain on his leg, and as such, he or she cannot wear safety shoe. So what can be done in that you have not seen anything bruises or see anything like cut, but the worker came to work and said, oh, he cannot wear boots because he has one injury also, which it is not noticeable by you, and you are the first aider in the site. What can be done in this aspect? Should we allow the worker to work without a safety shoe, or issue? That's the question I said I should ask. Because for me, what I usually do is I do tell them to go to the company hospital to go and do medical checkup. So since I'm not a medical practitioner, to ascertain the true nature of their leg, but most times some of them do complain. But I felt I should ask this question: if there is better way this issue can be handled. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. John. You have something to say, Mr. John? You have your hands up.
Yeah, in situations like this, you hear workers complaining. Sometimes a whole lot of them are looking for one excuse or another not to wear their complete PPEs. But then, like the method you use, like for them, you recommend the medical center, their partial retainership is okay. They have to go see the medical practitioner to ascertain the true level of their well-being. Also, there should be no compromise as regards the use of PPEs. If the person is not fit to work, then the person should not be at work, because the person cannot work when the person is having pains on his leg. And when the person is having pains on his leg, the person cannot wear his PPEs. And as such, without PPE, the person cannot work. So the person has to go to the doctor to certify his level of fitness. Until then, when he's stable, he can come back and work and get his PPEs and continue to work.
All right, that is exactly the feedback, what I want to say. Because if someone comes to me and tells me because of a particular, it's not only about boot now, that because of his hand or something that he can't use a particular PPE, then I would divide the attention from the PPE to the actual health issue that he has. Okay, forget about PPE now. You have this condition, you have this issue. We can't allow you to work. You need to be completely fit health-wise for you to be able to work or continue your work today. So go to the medical unit, the medical center or the hospital or the facility that we use, the clinic, and submit your complaint and let them see what they can do. So if he's truly ill and is not good fit to work, then we would address that as a medical issue. But if otherwise, then it needs to be questioned further on his orientation about PPE. Yes, and it needs to be questioned further, and it needs to be advised regarding the later effect of this. So I think we have another person raising up his hand. Mr. Oluwafemi, please kindly unmute yourself.
All right, thank you, sir. I appreciate the organizer of this wonderful session, the host, and then the presenter for today. As the presentation was going on, I was just thinking that is it not high time we begin to keep operational risk register in our construction sites, which will help us to review, analyze the risk factor, happening at each of our sites each day. The risk, the operational risk register can be reviewed by an operational risk manager if the site is a big one and they can afford an operational risk manager. Otherwise, it can be reviewed by the safety officer, and where there is no safety officer, the site project manager. The aim of keeping an operational risk register is that it allows the team, the particular team where the risk or the unsafe act is coming from or observed, to document it themselves. That as of today, this is what is happening, and we believe it could impact negatively on this site. However, for those who may not want to report themselves, so our nature, sorry to say that in this part of the world, it could allow others to, register what is constituting operational risk in a particular site. For instance, when you mention noise, that even noise can, if I heard him very well, can affect the maybe menstrual period of a woman. For a woman working in a site, that noise could impact and negatively. Maybe someone could not be a woman who has great phobia for noise, and it becomes an operational risk factor for such person. The one who is the source of that noise may not want to report himself or may not consider it as affecting other stakeholders in that site. That will also afford others who could be impacted negatively with such a risk factor or unsafe act to register it in the operational register as one of the risks they notice on that day. I believe this will also go a long way to help in our construction site when there are compromise, when substandard material are used. Those who also have relevant knowledge can register it as an operational risk. And by the time an operational risk manager, who could be an independent person if it's a big site and they could afford one, reviews it, he will know how to engage further, correct, and then maybe sanction where necessary. And if it's the safety officer, of course, the safety officer will know what to do better. And if it's the project manager, indeed, that should be the least, because the project manager can choose to cover such a report, especially if it's going to impact negatively on the project that he or she manages. But in any case, at least some information will also be useful for such person. I'm suggesting that if it is possible, we might need to be keeping an operational risk register in all our sites or environments where we know that there could be a risk factor. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Please kindly give me that was very detailed. Do we also have Mr. Jonathan, you want to say something? Mr. John, want to say something? Okay, Mr. Emmanuel, want to say something? I think, Mr. Emmanuel, your network is bad. Kindly work on your network. Techno POP4, please kindly give us your name. We can't accept POP4.
Okay. Good.
Please, Mr. Techno POP, please can you unmute yourself with your name? We are seeing Techno POP4 here.
Can you hear me, sir? Can you hear me, sir?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, I said my name is Udo. HS Udo. So I've been in the manufacturing for over 10 years. Yes. I've been in the manufacturing industry for over 10 years before venturing into construction. And I've seen and also observed in terms of the safety culture in construction. So my question is that based on the experience, when I venture into construction, I'm trying to balance the situation. In a situation whereby you create awareness to workers and you try to imbibe a very good safety culture. And I discovered despite the awareness and every training given, we find it very difficult to comply to those instructions. At that point, and all these things have been documented and also reported accordingly to management, but we are not seeing any positive changes along the line. So yeah, I know in some at point it becomes so critical to manage the whole situation as site. I just want advice how can I manage and also making sure that I achieve my results as a health and safety professional.
Okay, Mr. John Etta, do you have something to say, sir? Mr. John, are you there? Okay, talking about workers' behavior. Yes, I think it has to do with workers' behavior, and there's what we call BBS in health and safety, behavioral-based safety, which is a very important part of safety, health and safety. I think I've once done a training on BBS on this same platform before. Maybe I will try to host another training on BBS, behavioral-based safety. We need to understand the different behaviors of workers. There's what we call safety differently. Workers can be very stubborn, especially in the construction industry or manufacturing. And the compliance it will be very tough for them to, they find it difficult to comply to health and safety regulations. So the first thing is to have a standard. If you have a standard that you are not shaking on, that you are not going back on, signed by the management, top management commitment to health and safety, you start from there. Then you start to address safety by practice. What I mean is by we show examples of health and safety. We pick the few ones that are compliant and we appreciate them for what they do. We appreciate them for what they do. We show the expression of our commitment to ensuring that everyone is safe. We give them reasons why they should be safety conscious, videos, enlightenment sections about health and safety, make them to understand the impact of lack of safety practices in their lives and how they can even use it in their daily lives. So it's not only about we have gone past the era where we see us as policemen. Yes, we've gone past that era where they see us as policemen. Actually, we should be more of encompassing, showing empathy to them and making them to understand the side effect, and also be stern. We also need to be stern. If after we've done these things, they still continue to be adamant, then disciplinary actions should be taken. No, there are ways that I do that while I was working in the construction industry. And part of those things is to use the contact that they drop, or the contact that they give as third party, maybe as a guarantor, no? The person that they write down as their next of kin, maybe sometimes they use their wife. And I tell them that, Mr. So, I will call your wife after getting them. I will call your wife and I'll tell your wife that you are climbing a ladder. You are climbing a scaffold without body harness. Your husband wants to turn you to a widow. And I will call your wife because I have the number and I'll complain. Most of them will always say, oh God, please don't call my wife. My wife will be sad. My wife will give me wahala at home. No, jokingly, we joke about it, and at the same time we get the message passed. And another method I used to use is to make sure that when there is a disciplinary action to be taken, everyone should be a witness. How do I do this? For example, if I catch someone or who is not safety conscious, or who is not practicing deliberate, who is deliberately not safety conscious, I tell them to write, to take a book, to write, I shall not violate safety rules again. I'll tell them to write like 20 or 30, and they know when we're in primary schools, when we're in primary school, how we used to write, do our writing. So I will tell them to do it. Then after writing it, I will tell them to go and give like 5 to 10 friends of them to sign as witness. Most of them don't want to sign as witness because they think that this is the legal document. So if you go sign it as witness, if anything happens tomorrow, you go to and I will sign. So indirectly, I also pass the message across to them that if you do something, if you do this kind of a thing, I'm going to make sure that you also write this. You only find it difficult to write and look for 10 people to sign for you. Or at the end of the day, I won't tell them to wear a vest which is written administrative violator. So these are strategies, ways, ideas that we can actually use to pass the message and to maintain or to adjust or to control the workers' behavior. There are so many things around it. Maybe some other time I will give a training concerning that. I hope that answered your questions.
Yes, thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So, any other question, please? So, in the absence of none, thank you all for making it up to this moment. Please kindly subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's very important. And like I promised us, next week Sunday, we have one of our mother in health and safety, one of our topmost. I don't want to break the name. I don't want to expose it. Or how did they say it? I don't want to leak to leak it out. One of our top women in health and safety, very top woman in health and safety, she will be training us next week. Kindly make it up to another session with us. Let us hear from him. Let us learn from him. Sorry, let us learn from her. Let us hear from her. Let us educate ourselves through our widespread knowledge. It's very vast and conversant in health and safety. So thank you very much for making it up to this moment. Once again, this is our YouTube channel. Kindly go and subscribe. This program has been sponsored by Corda Safety Consult. Yes, for all your safety needs and general consultancy, you can always reach out to us. So thank you all for making it up to this moment. I remain my humble self, Walila Adegni Adegoke, and it's a pleasure having you. Thank you all, and God bless you.
Thank you,
Mr.
sir.
Mr. Temitope, thank you. Mudili, Mr. Ibrahim Aliyu, thank you. Mr. Aina, Mr. Solomon, Oluwafemi, Mr. Isaac, Mabel Motayo, Shibuike. Yes, some people are still joining. Yes, let us just
thank you.
Thank you
very much indeed, sir. Very wonderful training, sir.
Mr. Kabel, thank you. Thank you. Mr. Idu, Amu Tauhi, thank you. Akira Igu, Mrs. Gift, Kabel Amotsuka, yes. Mr. Ubo, thank you. Ola Ogun Opayemi, thank you. Meba Wundu Taiwo, thank you. Adepeju Adamson, my wife, my lovely wife, thank you. Thank you, like that. All right, thank you and God bless you. We are going to close this section now.